K2, one of the deadliest mountains in the world. It's not just the rock faces and the perilous drops, it's the biting, freezing cold. For decades, not a single expedition that made it to the death zone made it out alive. Until an unsung hero came to the rescue. On August 10th, 1953, 27,000 feet up, 6 American climbers lose their footing. They skid erratically towards a fatal 6,000-foot drop. Ropes are twisted, ice shards flying everywhere, and a storm rages around them. At the very last second, a hickory ice axe slams in between a boulder. The fall stops. When the snow dust clears, every man is still alive. They're still warm too, wrapped in the unlikely hero of their expedition. A Karakoram parka that Eddie Bauer stitched just for this mission. Fast forward a decade to a different attempt. May 1st, 1963, high on Everest, Jim Whittaker and Sherpa Nwangambu pushed the last steps to the summit. The wind is whipping their faces, but these two are wrapped in fire-red Eddie Bauer parkas, built to withstand negative 85 degrees Fahrenheit. With it, Jim Whittaker is the first American to stand on the summit. 2 mountains, 2 moments where survival relied on one label stitched over the heart. But to understand how Eddie Bauer's down-filled jackets carried a US flag to Everest Peak, and saved all but one climber on a day that would otherwise be known as pretty mild for K2's history, we need to rewind to the day 3 weathered climbers walked into Eddie Bauer's store and asked him for help. These mountaineers wanted to venture into the death zone and live to tell the tale. K2 rises where Pakistan meets China, a towering 28,251 feet into the sky. Locals call it the Great Mountain. Surveyors in 1856 labeled it K2, literally meaning the second peak they measured in the Karakoram. This mountain is so bloody, the fatality rate today sits at about 1 in 4, but in those days, not one person had made it to the top. Both names feel too small and unironic for a summit that has killed so many. Storms sweep into K2 without warning, slamming camp walls flat and erasing people from existence in minutes. Climbers fear K2 more than Everest. The numbers make this obvious. Far fewer people have stood on K2's summit, yet a far larger slice of them never came back. Like I said, 1 in 4 die on this mountain. Attempts have came and failed for half a century at this point. 1902, Swiss team turned back at 18,600 feet. 1909, Duke of the Abruzzi, high point 20,000 feet. 1938, Charles Houston's first American bid, up to 26,000 feet. 1939, another US team reached 27,500 feet. 4 climbers died. By 1953, Houston was ready to try again, yet the savage mountain would not yield its summit easily. It would test ropes, lungs, and the brand new Karakoram parkas in ways no laboratory could. High Camp sat at 25,500 feet, just below the shoulder of K2's peak. 8 men were waiting in their Karakoram parkas. The down baffles are ready to trap precious heat. Outside, the wind hisses across the tents. The storm would go on for 10 days. See, it's common for storms on K2 to drone on. It becomes so cold that you just lay in your sleeping bag doing nothing but waiting. You wait and wait, hoping to get your chance to take the summit. For this team, that moment never comes. On day 7 of the storm, the worst happens. Art Gilkey feels a sharp pain in his leg. He says it's just a cramp. Dr. Houston saw the truth: blood clots. If the clots reach Gilkey's lungs, he will die. Summit dreams left in a single thought: time to pack up. Now we have to go down. Protect Gilkey. That's the new mission. They cocooned Gilkey in a sleeping bag and then wrapped that in a spare tent. Then they tied the bundle to a rope. Eddie's parkas were so much warmer that this mission likely wouldn't have been possible in previous expeditions. With a storm roaring, it was risky to head down now. Hypothermia and frostbite were a real possibility, but Gilkey's life relied on this attempt. Wrapped in Eddie Bauer's down, they set off. They fought hard toward Camp 7. After hours in the storm, they had climbed down only 1,000 feet. It was going to get dark, and they had to call it or risk death. Bob Craig reached the ledge first to chip out tent platforms. George Bell, roped to Tony Strother, followed, but then Bell slipped. He yanked Strother with him. The rope snagged the lines of the rest of the men, including Gilkey. 6 bodies now hurled down a wall in a web of flying nylon. Above them, Pete Schoening, still upright, felt the jerk of the rope pulling him down. He slammed his axe deeper into a rock and clenched tight. The rope stretched thin as a pencil. Despite now being half the diameter, it somehow held. 6 men now hung in space with thousands of feet below them. One man, holding one axe and performing a hip belay, pulled them up, saving their lives. In mountaineering lore, it's simply referred to as the belay. The seemingly impossible nature of this save is still a mystery. Pete's quick thinking and brute strength has become iconic. Battered and in pain from the fall, the team reached the ledge at dusk. They fixed 2 axes as an anchor and clipped Gilkey in. They worked eagerly to pitch tents a few yards away. 45 minutes later, someone called his name. Only a print in the snow remained where the makeshift stretcher had been. Was he carried away by the wind? Maybe. But most of the team believed another answer. Gilkey was probably awake enough to see the state of the team and likely let himself go to help save the others. Either way, the parka kept him warm longer than other jackets could on that slope. And more importantly, it gave his team the ability to try and save his life. The 7 survivors headed down in the coming days. Beat up, broken ribs, and spirits low, every step towards base camp was a small defeat. Yet the down kept the adventurers warm, and the men kept moving. 5 days later, they shuffled into base camp. They were alive despite the loss of their team member. Many attempts at K2 are not this lucky. Sure, they never touched the summit, but they showed what courage looks like on a mountain. And they proved a simple truth Eddie Bauer had stitched into every seam. Warmth buys time, and time buys life. In 1963, an American team aimed for the top of Mount Everest. They had been preparing food, water, and gear for nearly 2 years. The group called itself the American Mount Everest Expedition, or AME. 19 American climbers were on the team. They worked with 37 Sherpas and 1 British teammate. To haul equipment, they hired nearly 900 porters from nearby villages. The porters carried 29 tons of gear. Swiss-American climber Norman Dyrenfurth led the team. He spent 2 full years collecting money and finishing paperwork. Nepal usually gave out only 2 Everest permits a year, but Norman promised science, safe conduct, and respect for local rules. They got their permit. Sponsors answered another call. The expedition needed help to make the trip financially viable. National Geographic and Life magazine were the first to join. Rainier Brewing Company, American Tobacco Company, REI, and the US Navy followed. Together, they provided $400,000, worth roughly $3 million today. Research played a huge role in this plan. Doctors hoped to study how thin air changes red blood cell counts. Other scientists wanted data on how soldiers might handle low oxygen battlefields. Film crews planned to record every step as a public science outreach. Eddie Bauer's workshop in Seattle built about 50 bright red expedition parkas. Each jacket used ripstop nylon on the outside to resist sharp ice. Inside, a heavy fill of goose down would trap in precious body heat. Velcro pocket flaps kept gear from spilling. A strip of wolverine fur edged every hood because that fur sheds frost. The jacket was so warm, climber Jim Whittaker kept his coat on his pack below 27,000 feet. He joked that it was too warm for anything else. The caravan reached the Khumbu icefall early in the climb. Towering walls of cracked ice rose like skyscrapers of glass. On the second day, a block broke free without warning. It crashed onto 27-year-old Jake Breitenbach and buried him. The loss shocked the entire team. A loss this soon was devastating to morale. Whittaker reminded the group that they would keep moving for Jake. From that moment, the expedition followed 2 paths. Most team members, including Whittaker, worked on the proven southeast ridge. That line was known, but still filled with unstable ice towers and deep crevasses. Tom Hornbein and Willie Unsold prepared a bolder plan on the west ridge. See, this route was only a vision. It had never been done before. They wanted to traverse the tops of Everest, Lhotse, and Noops. This would be very difficult and technical climbing. Norman agreed to this route, but only if an American reaches the summit by the standard route first. With a deal underway, the standard route team is ready to go. On the first day of May, the weather calmed down. Jim Whittaker and his team finally had their window. High on the mountain, Whittaker finally unrolled his red parka and pulled it on. They charged on towards the summit. The wind blows 50 miles per hour and the temperature is 35 below zero. Despite the wind quote-unquote blowing like hell, the jackets stayed warm. Step by step, the pair creeped closer to the highest point on Everest. At 1 p.m. on May 1st, 1963, Whitaker became the first American to stand on Everest. He planted the American flag proudly in the summit. Wearing Bauer red, he poses for a photo. For a moment, he was the highest person on Earth. Realizing he was out of oxygen, they had another battle ahead. Despite running out of oxygen, the two men make it down safe, cementing their place in history. With Americans successfully making the summit, Tom and Willie get excited. 3 weeks later, the West Ridge Plan came alive. On May 22, 1963, Tom and Willie left their tiny tent at 27,200 feet. They climbed through a steep gully. Then, they edged across the bare rock that guarded the West Ridge. Above 28,000 feet, the ridge narrowed to a knife edge, with a drop on both sides. Knowing this could mean death, the two men kept moving. The two were roped only to each other, but they knew the risks. Near sunset, they stepped onto Everest's summit. They officially reached the top by a route no one had climbed before. After snapping a photo, they started down to complete their journey. By this time, the light was fading and they had to move fast. As night came, they were forced to bivvy above 28,000 feet. At the time, this was the highest bivvy camp ever made. It was so cold, the men lost some fingers and toes to frostbite. But when morning arrived, they were still alive. In all, the expedition stayed on Everest for almost 4 months. When the team returned to the United States, they were heroes. The National Geographic Society presented the Hubbard Medal for Distinguished Exploration. President John F. Kennedy invited the climbers to the White House. Life magazine and National Geographic both featured Eddie Bauer red parkas on their covers. Only a handful of those original jackets still exist today. They sit behind museum glass and in private collections. Every seam reminds visitors that careful design helped a determined group of Americans reach the top of the world. Eddie Bauer's mission to outfit the expedition paid off. His brand moved from expedition outfitter to Everest tested. For outdoor dreamers, the message was simple. If a jacket can warm a climber on the top of the world, it can warm you anywhere else. It was these expeditions that cemented the Bauer name. For the next 30 years, this would be the go-to name for all expeditions. But it didn't last forever. See, Eddie sold his business in 1968. Every year from then on, the company lost a little bit of what made it special. You may have already been thinking to yourself earlier, Eddie Bauer did that? It's a fair question, as the brand is sold at stores like Costco today. It makes the story of Eddie Bauer seem that much more unlikely. So, what happened to the brand? Subscribe for our next video. You're not going to want to miss this. If you'd like to support our content and rep some awesome gear, check out the Outdoor Origins store. You can find the link in the description below. Every purchase helps us continue creating high-quality content for you, and we truly appreciate the support. If you like this video, click the next one showing on the screen right now to keep watching. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss an upload. Thanks for being a part of the Outdoor Origins community, and we'll see you in the next one.